What's up everybody and welcome to a new video. And in this video we're going to go over my notes for the UI customizations in VS Code. And the first note is about hiding or repositioning different UI elements. And you can do that in different ways. The first one is via the layout controls and then the customize layout button. So this button here. And what you can do here, for example, is to reposition the menu bar. So if I click this, then it gets put into the activity bar. You can hide the activity bar. With this button here, you can just toggle the primary sidebar because the sidebar is then still available. And the same is also true for the secondary sidebar and the panel. And then here lastly, with this option, you can hide the status bar. So if I click that, then the status bar is gone. So then in the next section here, you can change the primary sidebar position. So by default, it's on the left, but you can also put it on the right side. Then here in the next section, you can adjust the panel alignment. So to show that, let me then again open the secondary sidebar and then the panel. So if the option is set to center, then the panel is between those sidebars. And if I, for example, click justify, then it goes across the whole screen. Or I can also just use here option left, then it goes over the left sidebar, or option right, then it goes over the right sidebar. And here just a side note, when you use option center, then you have this maximize panel size button available. And this is not available for those other modes here. For justify it's not available, and for right and left it's also not available. And then next we have here the quick input position. So this is this window here. So if I set that to center, then it gets put into center, or you can also just drag here the top of this window and then move it anywhere. And here this then snaps to the center horizontally, this window, and then also vertically. Okay, so that is that. And then lastly here we have these different modes. So the full screen mode, Zen mode, and centered layout mode. And we've talked about that in another video. So I will put a link to that video into the video description. Okay, so that is then the first way how you can hide or reposition different UI elements. So then you can also hide or reposition different UI elements via the menu bar. So for example, if you go here to view and then appearance, then you have here these options, and a lot of them are the same as here in the customize layout button. However, there are also some additional options. For example, the activity bar position. So you can set that to the top. So then the activity bar is here depicted at the top. And then these accounts and manage buttons, they are depicted here in the title bar. So you could also then simply depict it here at the bottom, but now let's set it to the default. And then the next option I want to show is the panel position. So therefore let's open the panel again. And then what you can do is you can, for example, put it at the top, or you can also put it to the left or to the right. So if I put it to the right, then it's here depicted at the right hand side. Okay, so let's put it back to the bottom, panel position and then bottom. Then the next option that I want to show is this editor actions position. So these are these actions here. So you can also put them into the title bar. Again, let's reset them. So let's put them back into the tab bar. And then the last thing that I want to show is the zoom actions here. So you can zoom in, for example. And then if you want to reset it or reset the zoom, then you can simply use this option here, reset zoom. And then the last way in which you can hide or reposition UI elements is with the context menu. So for example, if I right click here the title bar, then here the different elements are listed and you can then toggle them on or off. So for example, let's say we don't need those copilot controls, then you can simply toggle them off. So let's toggle them on again. And then here this also works in the activity bar. So if I right click that, then you can toggle on or off those different elements. So let's, for example, remove this testing icon. Then you can also hide the different views within the sidebar. So for example, therefore, then you would right click the top of the sidebar. And then here you can toggle on or off the different views. So for example, let's remove here the timeline view. Then it's not depicted anymore. And then in the panel, you can also toggle on or off these different views. So therefore right click the top of the panel and then here you have those different views. So for example, let's toggle off the ports view. And then lastly here in the status bar, You can also toggle off those different elements. Therefore, right click the status bar, and then here you have all the elements. So for example, let's remove here this remote host element, and then it's not depicted anymore. And this context menu here also works for toolbars. So for example, if you right click here this toolbar, then you can toggle on or off the different actions. So for example, let's toggle off this refresh explorer action. Then it's not depicted anymore, and then it's here listed in this overflow menu. So let's toggle this on again. This also works here for the toolbar in the editor toolbar, or for the actions in the editor toolbar. So if you right click them, you can toggle them off, and then they are listed here in the overflow menu. So then to toggle them on again, right click this overflow menu, and then you can toggle it on. Or you can also run a specific command here in the command palette, namely this view reset all menus. So if I run this, then we have here those actions in the editor toolbar again. Okay, so those are my notes for hiding or repositioning different UI elements. So then the next note is about changing themes. And the first theme that you can change is the color theme. So this then will affect UI elements and syntax highlighting. And you can open the color theme picker in different ways. So for example, here we have the match button, and then themes, and then color themes. So here you can then switch to another color theme. But now let's go back to the one that I had before. And then additional themes can be installed via extensions. So for example, if we go here to the extensions and then search for GitHub theme, then here you have an extension with which you can then install the GitHub theme. And then here I also have a side note, namely the themes can be further customized. And here's then a link where you can find out more information about that. Okay, so these are my notes for the color theme. So then the next theme is the fire icon theme. And this affects the fire icons in the Explorer and here in the tabs. So to demonstrate that, let me open here this Python file. And then to open the fire icon theme picker, you can use one of these ways here. So let's again use manage and then themes and then fire icon theme. And then, for example, if I use this minimal option, then those icons now look like this. And if I use the SATI option, then the icons look like this. And here again, additional themes can be installed via extensions. So the fire icon theme that I'm using is here this material icon theme, and this is actually an extension. Okay, so those are my notes for the fire icon theme. And then the last theme is the product icon theme. And this affects all the built-in icons in VS Code. Exceptions are the fire icons and also icons contributed by extensions. And here again, to open the product icon theme picker, you can use one of these three ways. So let's go here again to manage and then themes and then product icon theme. And then here, however, there's just this default theme. So in this case, then additional themes must be installed via extensions. So for example, here you can browse for additional product icon themes. And then here, if I use, for example, this add material icons theme, then you can see here that the icons in the activity bar, for example, change, or here in the toolbar, or also here in the status bar, or here in the title bar. And also here, these arrows change. Okay, so these are my notes for the product icon theme. And with that, now we've covered all the notes that I wanted to cover with respect to changing themes. So then the next note is about rearranging views. Namely, they can be reordered or moved into different locations. So let's first look at how to reorder them. For example, here in the activity bar, if you simply drag and drop an icon, then you can reorder those views. And then here in the sidebar, you can also reorder those views here. So if you want to have the outline view first, then you can simply drag and drop it into here. So then let's put it back. And then also in the panel, you can reorder those views here simply by dragging and dropping. And then views can also be moved into different locations. So for example, you can move this outline view as an additional view here into the panel, or you can also put it within an already existing view. So for example, if I put it here into the ports view, then it's depicted here. And this also works the other way around. So for example, I can put the debug console as an additional view into the Explorer, or I could also put it into the activity bar. Or what you also can do is, for example, put it into the secondary sidebar. Okay, so this is how you can reorder views or move them into different locations. And then to reset them, either right click them and then select this reset location option. So for example, if I right click the debug console and then reset location, then it gets put back into the panel. Or what you also can do is simply run this command here, reset view locations. So if I run this here, we reset view locations, then all the views are again back in their original position. Okay, so these are my notes for rearranging views. So then the next note is about resizing windows. Namely, if available, then the sashes are highlighted in blue when hovering. So for example, if I open here the panel and hover here at the top, then you can see this blue highlight. Or for example, if I put this file here on the right hand side, then between those editor groups, we have here this blue highlighting of this sash. And then if you drag the sash, you can simply resize the window. And then if you double click the sash, then you can reset it to its default size. So if I double click this one here, and then also this one, they get put back to their default size. Okay, so those are my notes for resizing windows. So then lastly, let's go over the side notes here. And the first one is about changing the display language. Namely, you can do that via the command palette by running this command here. So if I go to command palette and then run this configure display language command, then here you can see a list of all the available display languages. Okay, so that's the first side note. And then the second side note is about the settings. Namely, a lot of the UI elements or functional behavior in VS Code can be customized via the settings. And if you check the references of this reference link here, then you can see all the mentioned settings throughout these notes. So for example, if I control click this 12 and then control click this 12, then here you can see all those references. And with that, you can then see many examples of how you can use the settings to customize the UI. Okay, so those are my side notes. And with that, now we've covered all the notes that I wanted to cover with respect to UI customization. So we've reached the end of this video. And then in the next video, we will go over my notes for the keyboard shortcuts. So thanks for watching and hopefully I will see you in the next video.